Welcome to the first stop on our tour. You may not realize it, but you're standing inside our largest exhibit, this building. It was constructed in 1931 and served as TWA's first headquarters. It was occupied by a variety of TWA departments, including operations, administration, and aircraft maintenance. In fact, the hangar attached to this building, constructed at the same time, was TWA's first maintenance and overhaul base. As you tour our museum, take some time to think about this. Some of aviation's legendary figures walk through these rooms, hallways, and the hangar. Charles Lindbergh sometimes stopped into this building to visit with TWA's executives. Jack Fry, TWA's pioneering president, had his office in this building. Even the legendary Howard Hughes would periodically work from this building. No ordinary executive, Hughes became the majority shareholder of TWA, maintaining a controlling interest in the company from 1940 to 1961. This building is quite a place. This stop is the first of 5 stops in this large display case. Before we get to this stop's details, I'd like to tell you a little about the case itself. It not only chronicles the history of TWA's operations, but also tells the story of our museum. The case was originally housed in TWA's maintenance and overhaul base at the Kansas City International Airport, about 20 miles north of here. Tom Perry, a TWA mechanic, started collecting TWA artifacts, models, and memorabilia for his fellow employees to enjoy. Over time, employees at the base constructed this case to house that ever-growing collection. In 1985, TWA flight attendant Marie Traynor realized the value and significance of the collection and chartered the TWA Museum. We've been in a few locations around Kansas City over the years, finally finding a very special home here, when our current director, Pam Blasham, spearheaded the museum's move to this building in 2012. Now let's take a closer look at this stop. We'll start off with those 2 photographs on top of the case. The first is the exterior of this building, taken around 1935. It should look familiar. You likely parked your car in nearby spaces and walked through that same main entrance. The other picture is of Charles Lindbergh, standing next to the Spirit of St. Louis. That photograph was taken at this very airport when it was dedicated on August 27, 1927. Just 3 months earlier, Lindbergh had made his historic flight from New York to Paris in that same airplane. A world-renowned figure in the history of aviation, Lindbergh would play a significant role in the early development of TWA. Now, on to some items in the case itself. We mark TWA's beginning as having occurred in 1925, when Jack Fry, Paul Richter, and Walt Hamilton organized Standard Airlines, flying passengers between Arizona and Los Angeles. In 1927, Standard was purchased by Western Air Express. If you look to the extreme left, there is an original Western Air Express schedule on the wall, by the right shoulder of one of the early uniforms worn by TWA pilots. While Western Air Express was flying, another airline was spreading its wings. Transcontinental Air Transport, or TAT, was formed in 1928. The chairman of TAT's technical committee was Charles Lindbergh. In 1929, TAT inaugurated service from New York to Los Angeles, using a combination of railroad and airplane travel. The airplane used was a Ford trimotor. There's a model of one on your left, sitting on the pedestal closest to you. As you're looking at it, picture the trip. It started with an overnight train ride from New York to Columbus, Ohio, and once there, you were whisked onto a TAT trimotor to make a 5-stop flight to Waynoka, Oklahoma. By the way, this airport, then known as Kansas City Municipal, was one of those 5 stops. Back to our journey, another overnight train ride was then taken from Waynoka to Clovis, New Mexico, where another TAT trimotor was waiting to take you on a 4-stop flight to Los Angeles. And it only took 48 hours. TAT's trimotors would eventually carry the letters TWA. That occurred in 1930, when Transcontinental Air Transport and Western Air Express merged to form Transcontinental and Western Air, or TWA. Starting in the 1940s, the letters TWA were changed to stand for Trans World Airline. The corporate name, Trans World Airlines, was officially adopted in 1950. The Ford Trimotor was typical of passenger aircraft in the 1920s and early 1930s. It seated between 10 and 14 people and typically flew no higher than about 5,000 to 6,000 feet. Aircraft cabin pressurization had not yet been invented, so altitude was restricted to structural limitations of the plane and the ability of passengers to breathe comfortably. On a pleasant, clear, and calm day, flying in a trimotor was a novel and exciting experience. Unfortunately, when the weather turned stormy, windy, or turbulent, it could become unpleasant. The term air sickness became a common expression. In addition to the Ford Trimotor, TWA's early fleet consisted of aircraft manufactured by the Fokker Aircraft Company. One of them was the F-32, shown right above the Ford Trimotor. First flown by Western Air Express, it was a behemoth for its time and carried the distinction of being the first four-engine commercial airplane. Look carefully, and you'll see under each wing are two engines, mounted in tandem. TWA also flew the Fokker F-10A, which in appearance resembled the Ford Trimotor. Unlike the Ford Trimotor, however, these early Fokker aircraft were constructed of wood, not metal. This significant difference would become an issue that would change the course of commercial aviation and lead to the construction of heavier and more durable aircraft. A new era was beginning.